Hey everybody, this is Jim Kurtz with Harvest Harmonics, and with you as always, we're going to be discussing today in today's special webinar how biophysics is transforming and changing the world of agriculture. Now, some of you guys may have heard of biophysics, some of you guys may not. We're going to be discussing that. Just so you guys don't have any confusions about that, I'll go ahead and define the word biophysics. Biophysics is just simply utilizing the laws of physics, okay, to stimulate and improve the biological processes of a living organism. In the particular case we're going to be talking about in the world of agriculture, biophysics is actually improving the health and quality of plant life and also improving other factors that, of course, farmers are looking for, like crop production, yield, improvements, quality, and various things. So I just want to thank you guys for joining us today in today's webinar as we discuss this. Very much, it's a very, very important topic. So without further ado, and I'm waiting for a couple more people to jump on the webinar here, so I'm stalling a little bit, but I want to invite you guys, for those of you guys who happen to be catching this on Facebook or catching this on YouTube or other places, please definitely write all your questions, put your questions down in the comments. We will be answering your questions at the end of our presentation today. So make sure if you have questions about either biophysics as a general topic or about human acid plant booster, one of the products we're going to be talking about today, or just about farming in general, please put those questions in the comments, and I'll be sure, me and my associate will be sure to make sure we get those questions answered for you. So definitely very, very important. We want to see a lot of interaction here. So put your questions in the chat, put your questions in the in the Facebook Live if you have any people catching this on Facebook, and we'll discuss here how biophysics is changing the world of agriculture. Now, just to let you guys know a little bit of background here, okay, the world of agriculture has been dominated over the last 60, 70 years by chemistry and chemicals, right? Ever since the onset of the Green Revolution back in the 50s and 60s, where production, the world of chemistry and chemical inputs and chemical pesticides dramatically improved crop yields, they also unfortunately had a negative effect in some cases on quality. But certain types of things were always chemically based. In fact, when I talk to farmers about the product that we have, the human acid plant booster, the first question they have is, well, is this some kind of input? Is this some kind of chemical? Almost to the point where they just don't believe that anything that's not a chemical can actually have a positive effect. But there's been a lot of research in the last 20 years, which I'll get into here in a second, that have proven that chemical stimulation of crop yields and plant health is not the only form and only mechanism by which we can actually improve crop quality and crop yields. So I want to just discuss here briefly some of this research. Now, again, up until about the year 2000 or so, almost all of the attention in agriculture is really focused on the environment of the plant. How can we improve the soil quality? How can we improve the water availability through irrigation, right? How can we improve various aspects of the plant? And to some degree in the late 90s, they started with genetic manipulation when we started focusing on the plant itself. Now, GMOs, or genetic manipulation of the genetic structure of the plant, is of course one way we can look at how do we increase the efficiency and output of the plant itself, in no matter what environment it's in. But of course, GMO has its own issues and has other issues. And one of the main issues goes back to chemistry, right? It's the introduction of genetic modification, by and large, has been to allow plants to become, resistant to certain herbicides and pesticides. In other words, we're trying to make the plant resistant to the kind of things that would kill the weeds, so that they can just crop dust and spray chemicals all through the crops, and then have pesticides and herbicides all over the crops. But the crop plants would not die because of the special genetic modifications. Well, that's great for production purposes, but it may not necessarily be good for overall long-term human health. And I'm not going to get too far into that. My intention here is not to degrade any other technology or techniques. My purpose here, of course, is to explain what biophysics is doing and how this solution is a rapid jump forward in terms of what we're able to do with not only crop health, but yield, quality, and soil quality as well. So I'm going to share my screen here with you guys and just show you how biophysics is actually improving crop yield and crop health. Now, of course, we call ourselves the future of farming today because this technology is so new and it is so far ahead of its time. Now, our mission is very simple. We want to help farmers grow healthier, better quality crops and with higher yields and reduce input costs. Okay, so it's not just a matter of we're going to make farmers wrong for using chemicals or pesticides or those things. That doesn't really work because farmers have to make a living too, right? We want to help the farmers produce the best quality product they possibly can. So of course, we developed a technology that allows them to get all of the yield and reduction of input costs that they want without having to use chemistry and things that may not be all that healthy for us. Now, Fulvio Valmelli, the inventor of this technology, studied for over 30 years the effects of biophysics on living organisms, including human beings, animals, plants, etc. And because he was able to narrow down a lot of the health issues that humans were having, as well as animals, he was able to narrow down and discover that nutrition was the key component. It was the common denominator, of course, of lack of health or illness. And so he began studying plant physiology in a way to make plant and animal health much more efficient, much more healthy. And so we would all have less disease and less things that he would have to eventually treat. Now, farmers themselves have, of course, some common problems. There's poor quality and quantity of yields, poor soil health, especially if you're using a lot of chemistry that will kill a lot of the microbiology in the soil. And that's going to create future problems for you. Even if it may solve a problem now, it may create future problems. And one classic example of that is the citrus industry here in Florida, which was decimated by an insect that came in that was not native to the area. It's called the Asian psyllid. It created this disease called citrus greening, where now it's wiped out about 80% of the overall citrus production here in Florida. And that was all brought upon by the unfortunate reality of not necessarily doing everything we need to do to take care of the soil. And it created a pandemic of sorts for the plant industry. And now, of course, we're doing everything we can to help that industry recover. Root quality and root density is, of course, always an issue. It's always something that we always have to maintain, especially when you have nematodes or other soil-borne pathogen. Nutrient absorption and utilization is, of course, always key. It's one thing to say we're going to make sure we add nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium and calcium and other essential minerals to the soil, but if that plant cannot absorb those nutrients and minerals effectively and efficiently, then that's not going to have the beneficial effect you want. And you're going to spend a lot of money dumping a lot of these minerals into the soil without having the result that you want at the end. And of course, the most important thing that farmers run into, which they may or may not be aware of, is of course photosynthesis efficiency. When the weather gets hot or the weather gets cloudy or the weather gets sometimes too cold, these different weather fluctuations can actually really reduce the efficiency of photosynthesis in the plant, and that reduces the energy that the plant produces, which of course in turn reduces health and yield over time. So again, getting back to biophysics, biophysics is a branch of science that applies the laws of physics to biological phenomena. And it's been around for about the last 15, 20 years, and it's just gaining more and more recognition now for some of its advances. Now, rather than using chemistry, as I mentioned before, to add nutrients to the soil or improve water, those types of things, we're using the physical laws and principles to increase the metabolism of the plant itself. So just to go back here, so what this biophysics is able to do, and specifically the Cuminacea plant booster, is able to enhance root soil health and nutrient availability in the soil. It enhances and increases root density. It improves nutrient absorption and water absorption in the plant, and it, of course, increases photosynthesis efficiency, especially in fluctuating weather conditions. So let's take a look at some of the examples, just to give you an idea. Before we really get into what it is and what the product is and how this works, I really wanted to just discuss and show you guys some of the results that we've seen just in the last 2 years, because it's really important to understand that this is not just something we came up with. It's not just a bright idea. This is something that's been thoroughly tested on farms all around the world in the last 2 years, and even the last 6 or 7 years totally. But this current version of the technology has been vetted against all crops and all different growing regions, and we're just getting more and more results pouring in. So this first example is the largest asparagus grower in South America. Now, he got a 49% yield increase over a 6-month period, and the chart here shows the different harvest days across that 6 months, and every single harvest day except for the very first day, the Cuminacea field outperformed the control field. Next example is in India. We got a 20% increase in yield there by weight, and we also improved the insect resistance of this farm tremendously. You see here in the picture on the left, the untreated field and how much insect damage there was throughout the leaves of these eggplants. It was really destroying a lot of their production. The one on the right, the field on the right, which is our test field, our Cuminacea field, as you can see, almost no insect damage whatsoever, very little damage whatsoever, and that's a big reason why we got such a big increase there. Now, the largest blueberry grower down in South America reported a 10% increase in overall size of their blueberries. They also noticed an improvement in Brix to acidity ratio, which basically means the fruit itself is sweeter. If you've ever had really tart, sour blueberries, you know it's not the best experience, you know, when you have a very tart blueberry. It may be good for you, but it doesn't necessarily taste that great. But the Kemenasi plant booster is helping these growers improve the sweetness of these blueberries so that you have a good flavor profile. In addition to that, of course, this grower also mentioned you experience less bruising over time and better shelf life after freezing with these Kemenasi blueberries. Now, I wanted to show you another farm. This is a different blueberry grower, also in Peru. Now, this particular region had a torrential rainfall. Now, what happened is it rained just constantly for almost 2 weeks. And after that rain, because it's a hot, humid area, the humidity causes fungal outbreak. And of course, what happens when you have funguses on fruit? Most of the time, what you see on the left is what happens. The fungus will get into the fruit, will actually penetrate down into the fruit and actually destroy it from the inside, as you can see with this gray mold on the left. The Kemenasi bushes, though, had such a high level of health, and the cellular walls were so dense that the fungus did not penetrate into the fruit, and very little of the blueberries that were treated with Kemenasi got damaged. It was almost no damage. So a huge difference there. And sometimes we're not talking about increases in yield. Sometimes we're talking about reduction of loss. And that can actually produce a much bigger effect. If you think, well, I produce, because we hear farmers and growers talk about, well, my production's great. I'm producing 250 bushels of corn on an acre, or I'm producing, 20,000 pounds an acre on my berries. Okay, good, but how much of that is actually making it to market? How much of that are you actually wasting because the quality was bad? You had insect damage, you had diseases, you had fungus. You may end up losing 30–40% of your overall yield, and what you're actually able to sell at market is only a fraction of what you're actually producing. With Kemenasi plant booster, your plants are going to be so healthy that their natural immune systems are going to protect it and the fruit and give you a much higher yield by comparison to the untreated fields. We also did a trial with the National Agrarian University down in Peru last year, and we saw a 26.7% increase in watermelon production. That was 12 tons per hectare, more than the control field. 33% increase in production of lentils. This was in India. And we also noticed a much higher quality on these lentils after harvest as well. On plums, we increased the Brix and fruit size of this grower in only 1 month, the last month before its harvest. We raised his overall Brix rating by 5 points, and we increased the size of the plums from about golf ball size to full size. So we had nice large plums, nice healthy looking large plums that were very, very sweet and of course tasty. You want sweet plums. Again, you don't want a tart plum that has very little sugar content. You want plums that have a nice sweet flavor and of course the nice size, because you as growers are going to make a lot more money on big sweet fruit than you are on smaller fruit or fruit that's not as sweet. In the next example, we got a 37% increase in overall weight, and this is on a strawberry field. The key things to pay attention here is this was a heat stress environment in these high tunnels. And because of the heat, as you can see in the picture on the left, the untreated high tunnel had a lot of heat damage. You can see how brown they look. You can see how unhealthy they look. And because of that, these plants, they flowered later. And of course, they produced fruit much later than the Kemenasi field. You see on the right, the Kemenasi treated field was much greener, much healthier, much larger. And also, of course, they flowered earlier. Now, the agronomists on this particular field also noticed that the soil microbial activity was much higher with Kemenasi. It had a better soil conductivity, meaning the saline of the soil was not as much a factor in retarding fruit growth. And of course, we got a better mineral balance on the treated field with Kemenasi. Another example here, and we're going to have this gentleman, this grower here on our show, Ask a Farmer tomorrow. So be sure you tune in at 4:30 p.m. Eastern for that. But Jim Reed here got a 100% faster growth on his citrus seedlings. You see on the left here, his neighbor's 2-year-old seedling here, and that had only grown up to about halfway up the side of his truck. The 1-year-old seedling that was using Kemenasi after 9 weeks, you see a huge difference, not only in the size and growth rate. Remember, this is half the amount of maturity. So, pardon me. So, in half the amount of time, you see twice the amount of growth. So, huge differences there. Much healthier looking, much faster growing. We expect these to get to full production at least a year early before his normal citrus seedlings here. Another example here is a nursery application. Again, 100% faster growth rate. These pictures were taken in the untreated dragon fruit seedlings here. On the left, you can see about half the size. Also, look at the difference in thickness of that stem too. It's not just that we're getting a really tall, spindly stems. We're getting very thick, very healthy stems in about half the time. On peppers, we got a 97% increase in overall yield there. Here we have, it was on 2.5 hectares here. And more importantly, when people see that number, they immediately don't believe it because it just sounds too good to be true. It sounds too high. But a big part of this, I want to break this down for you. The big reason why we got such a big difference in weight is because the Kemonoxy plant booster peppers are much thicker, much denser, much larger. And you can see just the side-by-side picture here, how much denser and thicker and denser that flesh is. When we weighed them on the average over 45 fruits, the average weight of the Kemonoxy peppers was about 35 grams per pepper, and the control was only about 22 grams per pepper. So huge difference in weight there just because the peppers are so much thicker and heavier. On potatoes, we got a 16.3% increase in yield there on this potatoes with an extra tuber on the average per plant. We got a milk production by watering the field that these cows were grazing on. This dairy farmer was able to get 140 liters of milk more per day from his dairy cows. He has 24 dairy cows, so you figure an extra 5-6 liters per day on his milk production. And the milk was higher quality. It wasn't just like they're producing a lot of low quality milk. The quality index was much higher for this farmer as well. Now we attribute this increase in milk production and quality to the fact that the Kemonoxy plant booster routinely increases crude protein in the grass as well as overall quality. So you have a much more nutrient dense grass. That means the cattle that are feeding off that grass are going to be healthier as well. And of course, they'll produce more milk. This particular farmer got a 200% better water penetration into the soil, and the significance of this particular farm on this almond grove is that the farmer is using about 67% less water. Now, if you guys are in California or even Oregon and Washington or anywhere where there's a drought situation, there's a water stress situation, I've heard a lot of farmers tell me that they're actually rationing the water and they're afraid they're not going to be able to get a crop out, or they're going to have issues, or they're going to pay a lot more money for it. Kemonoxy can help you reduce your overall water usage. In this particular case, this particular farmer is using 67% less water this year versus last year. So if you have water as a problem and as a consideration, then you should be looking at Kemonoxy plant booster, because this will definitely help you with that. Another case of water deficit, this region this last year had 30% less water available for irrigation than the year before. So the result is all of the other plantations in the region reduced their production from about 30 to 34 tons per hectare on these grapevines down to about 20 to 24 tons per hectare. However, the Kemonoxy field, even with this less water available, was able to increase their production to 42 tons per hectare. And of course, that was a huge difference. So while everybody else is producing less, this farmer is producing more, and he's making a lot more money as a result also. Now, root structure, we mentioned root density and root structure. Here's an example here on these lemon trees after 9 weeks of watering. You see on the right how much thicker, denser, and longer these root structure is versus control. The control very, very thin, very weak, not very well developed. On tomatoes, we saw a 100% improvement in overall quality of these tomatoes with 0 pesticides. This particular farmer walks his fields and actually notes the insect damage. And in this case, he said he didn't even need to use pesticides this year because he had such a huge difference in the overall health of the plant and the quality. He also harvested 2 weeks early, which helped him get out ahead of the market, which of course, as a farmer, you know, will make more money. If you can get to market a couple weeks earlier, sometimes you're making a lot more money on that early harvest than you otherwise would. So that can be a good way you can make a lot of money with Kemonoxy plant booster. In addition to the fact that you're making more yield, you're making that yield earlier. So before the whole market hits the market and reduces and the whole price drops, you can actually hit that market when it's higher and make more money that way. Another example of melons, this is a 25% increase in yield on melons with less presence of miner fly. Of course, that's a disease that reduces overall production. And artichokes, we got a 27% increase in production there with 50% less nematodes. We also on onions, not on onions, I'm sorry, this is on rice paddies. We got a lesser presence of nematodes and fungus on these rice paddies. And this is a huge difference there. See the difference in overall fresh weight as well. And 23% higher price with a higher Brix level on these grapes. Now this particular grape farmer, as I mentioned earlier, he hit that market early, you can make a lot more money. In this case, he got a better quality, he hit the market early, and he was able to get $1.80 per kilogram on his grapes with the treated Kiminasi grapes versus $1.46 on his untreated grapes. So that's a huge difference there. It's 23% more money in your pocket if you're able to take advantage of that. In this particular farmer's case, he got $11,316 per hectare, which is about $4,300 per acre. So if some of you guys might be wondering, well, how much does this cost? I guarantee you whatever we charge you for it, it's not gonna be anywhere near the money you're gonna make with grapes or any kind of specialty crops. But we'll of course have those conversations with you later on. Again, guys, just if you're watching this, please, take the opportunity to type in your questions, send us a message. We wanna hear what your questions are. We wanna interact with you. By all means, let us know. We also did some tissue sampling on those grapevines that I mentioned here, more nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and boron on the treated vines, and a reduction in mite infestation from 48% to less than 10%. So all these different results are a result of the fact that the Kiminasi plant booster is a completely different approach. Biophysics applied to agriculture is a huge game changer for agriculture. And I'm going to get into that now. So the question you're probably asking you, or have been asking, I'm going to take a sip of water here, is, well, what is this product? What is biophysics? How can I get my hands on this if it's really producing these kinds of results? Sorry about that, guys. Well, this particular product is called the Kiminasi Plant Booster. It's the first product of its kind to use a full systemic approach to plant health. Now, what do I mean by systemic? I mean that most research and most products really handle a very small piece of the puzzle, so to speak, a very, a small component of the overall process. So fertilizers, for example, focus on how do we add the minerals that the plant needs to the soil so that it gets what it needs, right? How do we add nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium and calcium and these types of things to the soil so that the plant has everything it needs to grow? Other types of products really focus on insect resistance and how do we reduce insect damage. Other products still deal with fungicides and how do we kill funguses and fungal outbreaks. Other products really focus on other different areas. So Kiminasi Plant Booster takes the entire process, the entire metabolic process of the plant from the soil all the way through photosynthesis and optimizes all those different key areas simultaneously so the entire system is improved. It's kind of like if you're rowing a boat and you're on one side, your friend's on the other side. If you start rowing really fast to get that boat moving, but your friend doesn't, it's not going to produce the results you want. An example here is we're improving the microbial activity in the soil. We're increasing root density to allow the plant to absorb more water and nutrients. We're improving the nutrient absorption mechanism itself in the plant, and we're increasing the efficiency of photosynthesis, especially during those fluctuating weather conditions like hot weather, like cloudy weather, etc. So when you can optimize all those different key components together at the same time, then you will have results that are far above and away anything else on the market. So to give you a quick example, what this does, it boosts water, nitrogen, and light absorption to maximize energy production during sunlight hours. It will also stimulate carbon dioxide absorption and glucose metabolism, which stimulates the Calvin cycle or the non-sunlight aspect of photosynthesis. And no matter what kind of carbon fixation method a plant uses, we will widen the range of conditions under which photosynthesis continues to occur. So in those fluctuating weather conditions, when normally a plant would shut down photosynthesis and stop, the Kiminasi Plant Booster will keep that process going so that it continues to generate energy all throughout the season. Can you imagine if you were losing about 20 to 30% of your overall potential energy production due to these bad weather conditions? The Kiminasi Plant Booster is going to keep that engine running so you get a 20 to 30% increase in overall efficiency, which is why you see numbers like 20%, 30%, 50% and above. So just to give you a quick example, this can be installed in a number of different ways. It does utilize an irrigation system. We can install on small farms and gardens with these prefabricated pipe fittings like you see on the top left. We can do midfield installations like you see on the bottom left, and we can do full field installations all the way up to 200 acres and even big pivot systems, utilizing a system that attaches to the outside of the irrigation pipe like this. We've done several installations. In fact, I got to update this map. It's been a couple months since I've updated this, so I got to add my new flags here in these different areas. But We have over 100 installations just in the last year and a half. We have, of course, many farmers jumping on board every week in South America, Asia, and other areas. We also have hundreds of farms. So altogether, we have a total of approximately 400, 500 farms around the world using this and getting amazing results. And we'd love to, of course, extend that by 10-fold or 100-fold so that every farmer has a chance to use this. And just to give you a summary here, it's a new technology. It's not like anything else you've probably seen before. It is very easy to install and use. It does not require power or any kind of external maintenance once it's installed. And it can be used on any farm that irrigates. And it will, of course, improve soil health over time. So I'm going to join here. I'm going to open this up for questions, guys. So if you guys have questions, I'm going to check the Facebook here. I'm going to see if anybody has questions. If you guys have questions, please, of course, put them in the comments here. We'd love to talk with you and answer your questions. So let's see what we got here. A few comments here. Let's take a look. If my Facebook will, here we go. Okay, good. Lisa asks, you stated it helps with water conditions. What about an area suffering from droughts? Yes, good question, Lisa. Thank you so much for asking it. Yes, as I mentioned, because of the way it improves the efficiency of the mechanism of not only water absorption, but water utilization. It has a two-pronged effect. Okay, first of all, it's going to extend photosynthesis even in hot, dry conditions, like a drought condition, for example. So normally if a plant would kind of shut down, it would close its leaves, it will kind of shut down, and it will kind of stop producing energy during and shut down its photosynthesis process during really hot weather, as an example, or really dry weather. So the Chemotacea plant booster will enable the plant to utilize the water available more efficiently so that it continues to produce the energy that it needs even in those conditions. So yes, it can definitely help with drought. So again, farmers, if you guys have a drought situation, please definitely let us know. We would love to help you with that. I'm going to actually, I'm sharing my screen here. And I'm going to check out the next question here. So thank you, Lisa, for that question. Maria asks, how does this product help me save water? Again, I just mentioned that. Thank you for that question. Again, you know, it helps the plant utilize water more efficiently. And Care Bear says, I live in more swampy areas. Will this help clean the water that my crops are already in? The product does not actually filter the water, so it's not going to clean it necessarily. But what it will enable it to do is if you have too much of certain minerals or elements in the soil that are not healthy for the plant, it will help kind of provide a buffer for the plant. So the plant will absorb the nutrients that it needs without necessarily absorbing a lot of toxic substances that would not be good for it. And a classic example of that, and this is something we have a university trial ongoing in Israel right now to prove and document the particular effectiveness is, but if you have high salt content and high salinity in your soil, so if you have a lot of sodium in your soil, which is in various areas of the world, that's a big problem, the Chemotacea plant booster will definitely allow the plant to absorb the nutrients that it needs without absorbing too much sodium, which would typically burn the plant and cause damage. So it can definitely help with the overall improvement of the plant health. It's not going to filter those chemicals out of the water, but it can help reduce the negative effects of salinity and other problems. So it will definitely help there. So all good questions, guys. Thank you so much for asking them. And I don't see any more here. If you guys happen to catch a replay on this, by all means, still type your questions in. We'll answer them either one-on-one or in a future episode. In the meantime, that's pretty much all we got today, guys. I wanted to thank you for joining me for the future of farming today, because this is going to really, really improve your farm and your profitability, not just this year, but going forward. And stay tuned, of course, tomorrow for our Ask a Farmer with Jim Reed of KR Citrus. He is a farmer that's been using this steadily for the last year and a half, and he can definitely attest the tremendous benefits of the Chemotacea plant booster, not only in his citrus groves and his outdoor fields, but also in his nursery, in his greenhouses and his nursery, where he's able to produce a better quality plant in a shorter period of time and make a lot more money. He's actually said he's making a lot more money this year versus last year with this. So that's the name of the game. We want to help farmers create better, healthier quality products at less cost and improve their profitability in the process. So stay tuned to listen to Jim Reed tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. And that's all we got today, guys. I appreciate your time and thank you so much for joining us. and we'll see you again tomorrow.